Hello, welcome to Pragim Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 39 of SQL Server. In this session, we'll learn about what a view is and the advantages of using views. So what is a view? A view is nothing more than a saved SQL query. A view can also be considered as a virtual table. Let's look at an example which will make this definition clear. On this slide you can see the departments table, which has got department ID and department name columns, and this is employee table, which has got ID, name, salary, gender and department ID columns. Now I want you to write a query which can produce the output that you can see on the right hand side. Okay, so the ID, name, salary and gender comes from the employees table, and department name comes from the department table. So obviously, to produce this output, we will have to join employees table with the departments table, and we have seen how to do that in part 12 of this video series. We have spoken about joins extensively in that part. Okay, so here we have a join query which returns ID, name, salary, gender and department name from these two tables by joining them. Okay, so now how to create a view? Okay, to create a view we use create view statement. If we want to create a table, we use create table, and along the same lines, if we want to create a procedure, we use create procedure statement. So similarly, to create a view, create view and view name. Okay, and if you look at the name of the view here, we are getting employees by department. Okay, so in the name of the view we have prefixed that with VW, standing for view. Okay, so just by looking at the name of a SQL Server object, if you follow the right naming conventions, you can tell what type of object it is. For example, if it's a table, we prefix that usually with TBL. If it's a stored procedure, we prefix that with SP. Okay, so along the same lines, if it's a view, prefix that with VW. So just by looking at the name of an object, you can tell what type of object it is. Okay, so create view, view name as, and then after as you specify your select query. Okay, so what is this view doing? This view is returning employees by department, and that's the reason why we have written this join query first. Okay, because when we look at views, we don't want to get into the complexity of writing a joins query. Okay, so that's why we have written that query, and all we have done here is create view, view name as, we are just putting our select query there. Okay, so let's create this view using SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, so we have got these two tables that we have just seen, the employees and departments table, and obviously we are, if I execute this query, look at that, I get all the rows. Now this is just a SQL query and it is not stored anywhere. Okay, so let me go ahead and create a view. So to create a view, we use the create statement. So create view and view name. Let's call this employees by department. Okay, as, and then your select query. That's about it. So let's select this and execute. So command completed successfully. So this view is now created in the SQL Server. So once the view is created, how do you see that view? So to see the view that is just created, go into the database, which is sample database, because we created this view in the sample database. So select expand sample database and look in views folder. So when I expand that, I don't see anything. So let's refresh that. Look at this, we can see the view employees by department. Okay, so now we have created this view. So if you look at the view itself, does it contain anything? It doesn't really contain anything. It is just a select query. Okay, so now let's say I want to select data from this view. How do I do that? You can treat this view just like a table. So if I want to select data from that, I can just say select star from that view. So what's our view? VW employees by department. Paste that, F5. So I am treating this view like a table. So when you select data from this view, in the sense when you execute this select query, what actually happens is the database engine knows that, okay, this view is actually getting its data from this TBL employee and TBL department tables. So for this view, these two tables are the underlying tables or base tables. Okay, so when we execute the select star from view employees by department, SQL Server Engine actually execute this select query on these two base tables and return us the data from those tables. Okay, so a view in fact doesn't store any data. But here we are treating that view like a table. That's why a view is called as a virtual table. But in fact, when you look at the definition of the view, it doesn't store any data. It is only a saved select query. The reason why we say it as a saved select query is because when I say sp underscore help text and then the name of the view, you can actually look at the definition of that view. Okay, now we can use sp underscore help text with a stored procedure with a function. Similarly, along the same lines, you can use that with view as well to get the view definition. So what is stored in the database? Only the select query. So a view is nothing more than a stored query, or you can treat that as a virtual table. And what does the definition say? A view is nothing more than a saved SQL query. A view can also be considered as a virtual table. So creating a view itself is pretty simple. Now let's turn our attention to what are the advantages of using views, or where do we actually use these views. Now, views can be used to reduce the complexity of the database schema. Now we have just done that. If you look at this, let's say we have some non-IT users within our organization who interact with our database. So non-IT users, joins is a little complex topic for them. Okay, so writing a joins query is not that easy for non-IT users, but then they want to join maybe employees, department, gender, all the other tables. Maybe they want to join like 5 to 6 tables. So writing a join query is not simple for non-IT users. Okay, so in that case, what you can actually do is write a view which joins all those tables and then give access to that user to the view, and then that user can treat that as a single table, that view as a single table, and it is easy for him to query that table, and they can simply use the where clause and filter whatever data they want. Okay, so obviously views can be used as a mechanism to simplify the database schema for non-IT users. Okay, and we have looked at an example of how to join two tables, but we can join more than two tables. Okay, so what's the other advantages of using views? Views can also be used as a mechanism to implement row and column level security. Okay, let's look at an example of that. So how can views be used to implement row and column level security? Now if you look at the view that we have at the minute, this view is basically returning all employees within my organization. Now let us say there is an IT department manager and I want to provide him access only to see IT department employees. In that case, if I grant him access to the tables themselves, what's going to happen? He can issue a select query from those tables and he can see all the rows and all the columns. So I don't want to do that. I want to allow him access only to his department employees. So how can I achieve that? In that case, create a view, and within the view retrieve only IT department employees, and then to that employee give access to that view. Let's do that. So we already have this view, so let's copy this. So instead of granting him access to the underlying base tables, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this view. View, maybe we'll call this IT employees. Okay, and what we want to do, we don't want to return. If you look at this select query, if I just execute this select query, it's going to return all the employees, but we don't want that. We want to filter the employees by department. So what you can actually do is you can say where tbl department dot department name is equal to IT. So when we create this view, and then once we grant access to that employee to this view, he can only see IT employees and nobody else. So select star from this view, he should only see the IT employees now. So only the IT employees. Okay, so we have just implemented row level security. Along the same lines, we can also implement column level security. For example, in any organization, salary is confidential information and we don't want everybody to see the salaries of other people. In that case, we can actually create a view which hides salary column and then retrieves all the other columns. Let's quickly do that. So obviously, to do that, we can create a view which returns non-confidential information. So let's give it some meaningful name, view non-confidential data. And we don't want this where clause because we don't want to implement row level security. We want to implement the column level security. So from the select list, I'm going to knock off the salary column. And let's create this view now. So what's going to happen here? We're only going to get all the columns except the salary column. So select star from that view. Look at that, we get every column except the salary column. Since the employee does not have access to the underlying base tables, there's no way he can get access to that salary column. So views can be used as a mechanism to implement row level and column level security. And views can also be used to present only aggregated data. For example, let's say you want to prevent users, the end users, from looking at the detailed data. You want to provide them only with aggregate data. So how can we do that? Again, using views. Okay, so in your view definition, don't grant them access to the underlying base tables, which will if you grant them access to the underlying base tables, they can see everything. So instead of that, we can create a view which aggregates data and then return them back. And obviously to do that, create view. Let's call this view summarized data. As what do we want? We want, let's say for example, if you look at this data, I want the total number of employees by department. For example, in IT department, how many employees are there? In HR department, how many employees are there? So we want total number of employees by department, the summarized data. And obviously to do that, we have to use group by clause, and we have seen how to use the group by clause in the previous sessions of this video series. So we want the department name itself, so select DEPT name, and then we want the count of employees. So we use the count aggregate function, so count of ID, and let's say total employees from the tables, which are TBL employee, and we want to join that obviously with TBL department on TBL employee dot department ID is equal to, let's copy that, TBL department dot department ID, and we want to use the group by clause to group by department name. Let's create this view. F5 command completed successfully. Now let's select the data from this view. So select star from view summarized data. So now we get the aggregated data, department name and total number of employees. So views can also be used to present aggregate data only and hide detailed data. And obviously to modify a view, we can use alter view statement. Now to modify any object in SQL Server, we use for example, alter table name. Similarly, alter procedure name. Along the same lines, if you want to alter a view, alter view name. And similarly, if you want to drop a view, you'll say drop view and view name. On this slide, you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.